Welcome to The Shoreline, brought to you by Shores and Islands, Ohio, where finding your Lake Erie love is a sure thing. Thank you for joining us. I'm your host, Jill Bauer, and joining me, as always, is my co-host, Dayton Barnett. I am the PR manager for Shores and Islands, Ohio. Dayton is the social media manager, and together we bring you The Shoreline each and every week to give you the inside scoop on what's happening here in our island and coastal communities. Good morning, Dayton.
Good morning.
How's it going?
It is going well. It's spooky season.
It's spooky season. I think we're allowed to say that now. It's October, fully fall.
It's in my book.
Well, Halloween has been going on for a while, right?
Oh yeah. It starts early.
Have you been over to Cedar Point?
I haven't yet, but I do plan to get over there at some point to make sure I get some stuff over there.
I was over there for the opening weekend of Halloween Weekends, but I was actually at a conference. I was at Bloggy Conference.
Right.
So I wasn't in the park, but I was park adjacent. I was out on the boardwalk and the beach, and I still could see all the decor and hear the spooky music. And it is such a vibe. It is just really cool over there for this season.
Yes, I've heard they're doing a pretty good job. So I got to make my way over there to get spooked.
For sure. What else are you looking forward to in this great month of October?
I would say there's so much happening, honestly, right now with a lot of fall events. You got festivals happening across the board, apple pickings, whether you go to, Burnham's or Corey Hill, which I don't know if we've ever had them on the show before. We should get them.
No, Corey hasn't been on. We need to get them on. You're right.
Yeah. So there's a lot happening in terms of the fall activities. I know Lakeside, I think Marblehead Lighthouse is having their festival soon. Yeah. Donut Fest down in Sandusky. That is something I would like to get to because donuts. So yeah, there's a lot of obviously like fall heavy stuff. So the best way to find that stuff, obviously, as you guys know, head to the website. It's all there, Absolutely. All the events. That way you don't miss a thing. There's probably something going on today that you'll want to go see. So check it out.
Absolutely. And if it's not on the website, it's on social media. That's where you can see Dayton on Facebook, on Instagram, on TikTok, usually out and about at some of these events. And you can kind of, see what's happening there. And sorry if you missed it, but you definitely got a plan to come back the next time it comes around. And we love to show you all of the fun things that are going on in the region. And those can all be accessed from the website as well, which, of course, is shoresandislands.com. And on social media, please be sure to engage with all of our posts. We like comments and questions and always looking for suggestions on what you want to see there. If you're not from the area and you want to see what things look like or, what a certain festival atmosphere is like, make the suggestion. We can always put it in our calendar to plan to get out there. But again, you can find everything on shoresandislands.com. So today on the podcast, we're heading back out to one of our favorite islands, Put-in-Bay. But this time it's to chat about a unique topic, the Great Lakes Islands Alliance and our area's role within this organization. Joining us on the shoreline today are Phillip Rice and Peter Huston, both representing the Great Lakes Island Alliance, or GLIA. Phillip is a year-round resident of Mackinac Island up in Michigan. He joined the GLIA team in 2024 as their communications specialist, bringing expertise from his background in nonprofit administration and media. He also serves as the administrative director for the Upper Peninsula Arts and Culture Alliance and helps run the Mackinac Island Community Theater. You guys have very similar bios, I will say that. Moving on to Peter Huston from Put-in-Bay. He is a film, television, and documentary director and senior producer and has produced programming for PBS, Hallmark, Odyssey, Home and Garden, and has co-produced a feature film, continues to do scores of educational projects. Peter is the past president of the Put-in-Bay Arts Council, past chairman of the planning board, and director of the bicentennial celebration for the Perry Group. Now, the Perry Group is a Friends of Perry's Victory and International Peace Memorial group, and that bicentennial festival was back in 2013. It was amazing. He is also on the board of directors of the Lake Erie Foundation and the Lake Erie Islands Historical Society, also a board member of Shores and Islands, Ohio. Peter was director of the Put-in-Bay Chamber of Commerce for 5 years and a project manager for the Great Lakes Island Alliance. So welcome to the Shoreline, both of you.
Great. Thank you very much for having us.
Thanks for having us.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Let's start with Phillip and the Great Lakes Island Alliance organization. Can you please tell us what this group is all about?
Yeah, so our mission really is to connect all the islands in the Great Lakes to each other. Being on an island and having a community that's on an island often can be very isolating. Some islands are really close to the shore, like Lake Chanel Islands up near where I live. And some islands like Beaver Island are way out in the middle of the lake, and it takes almost an hour to get out there on a ferry. The purpose of the Alliance is to create opportunities for everybody who lives on an island to come together. We've had summit events at various times throughout the history of the organization. Right now we seem like we're more on a 2-year cycle, but we also have Zoom calls once a month with everybody who wants to be on Zoom. And we take 30 minutes at the beginning of every Zoom call and just share what's going on your island. What new projects are you working on? What's your city council up to? How's your ferry situation? Is there ice on the lake where you are? What are all those concerns that are going on in your community, and how can we support each other? So it's really a network. It's a way for us to connect to each other and not feel so alone and isolated in the world.
Yeah, obviously we all know, since we live near the lake, everything is especially in the winter season, but we know the locals that kind of stick around, the numbers definitely dwindle. So that's actually really, really nice. And I guess you would say your members are primarily maybe islanders, or do you think you guys have some members that are also, kind of on the mainland, but, enjoy the space and the knowledge?
Well, you used the dreaded word islander, which it's totally loaded term. And we have had many conversations about what that word even means, whether or not you're allowed to call yourself an islander, if you have a part-time residence not on an island. Here on Mackinac, we often don't even call people islanders unless they were born on the island, and people get real offended if you, I can't say I'm an islander because I wasn't born here. So yes, our members and our constituents are people who have connections to islands, but I like to use the term island communities because you look at a place like Put-in-Bay, it's a whole region that includes islands. But if you're right there on the shore, you might consider yourself part of that community, even if your actual address is not on an island separated by 30 feet of water or whatever it may be. So we think of our members as people with connections to islands and island communities. And most of the Great Lakes islands, with the exception of a few that are way out there, they have really strong ties to their mainland counterpart. So, you can't have a ferry company that has its only offices on an island. You've got to have infrastructure on the big part of the mainland.
All right. So, and you just mentioned, a couple other islands, and that there are other islands. Where are some of these islands located? Some of the names of them. There's so many that I think a lot of people don't even know about that are on Lake Erie.
Well, if you're just talking about Lake Erie Islands, we have the Rattlesnake and North Bass and Middle Bass and Kelly's and Peely that are all part of the same archipelago. Along with Put-in-Bay or South Bass Island. And the Great Lakes Islands Alliance is actually spread out from Madeline Island up in Superior all the way down to Amherst and Wolfe Island in the east end of Ontario. So we have a very large area of islands that are part of the Alliance.
About how many islands are in your group, part of the Alliance?
To answer your question, at one point, there were over 300 islands within the Great Lakes that had year-round communities on it. And today, that number is probably more in the neighborhood of 25 to 30. And that's really what we're all about, is sustainable year-round communities.
Okay, well, I want to jump back to Philip for a minute. You mentioned you're from Mackinac, which, we know is up in Michigan. Can you tell us a little bit about what Mackinac Island is like, just kind of comparing and contrasting to what we're familiar with here at Put-in-Bay and Lake Erie Islands?
Totally. And I just want to throw out there for the history buffs that may not be aware, Mackinac Island is technically part of the Upper Peninsula of Michigan, which, if you know your history, actually at one time was part of Ohio. We got the UP. Michigan got the UP from Ohio as part of a treaty. So technically, Mackinac Island was at one time part of Ohio.
Island?
It surely was. That is a fact of history. Mackinac it's really part of the northern Michigan kind of cultural landscape. There's a lot of history up here, a lot of French history because we're close to the Canadian border. Mackinac in particular is unique because we don't allow cars on the island. In 1898, the folks who owned the carriage company that did all the carriages and horses on the island, they lobbied with the city council to get an ordinance that banned cars because they were scaring the horses. We still have a very strong horse culture here on Mackinac. We have about 500 horses that are here throughout the year to take everybody around on their taxis and to deliver the Amazon packages and the FedEx packages and
via horse.
Give people tours. Yep. Yeah. So that's the first thing people notice usually when they get off the boat is, whoa, there's horses everywhere. So that's a fun aspect of it. But otherwise it's like a lot of other small rural Midwest communities. It's a tight knit town. There's an Irish pub downtown. There's a community theater that puts on musicals every spring. It's a nice little place.
About how many people live there year round?
Ooh, that's a good question. So in the summer, on any given day, there's between 10 and 20,000 people on Mackinac Island. And in the winter, from November 1st to May 1st, there's about 500. So
quite
pretty
a
big
difference,
difference. Yeah, it definitely changes once you get past Halloween.
Peter, what is the count for Put-in-Bay? How many people do you think live there year round?
On any given day, it can vary from 300 to 400. And, that's the thing about our demographics between us and Mackinac. We are very similar in that, we have those days when we have 10 or 15,000 people in the summertime here. And then in, the wintertime, other than the kids that you see going to school, you might not see anybody unless you go to the post office. So, it's hard to tell sometimes. And a lot of people want you to know that they live here, but in fact, they've snuck off to Florida or something.
So Philip actually glanced over earlier about the summit. Peter, for the past several years, this group has met annually for the GLIA. That's kind of how, at least I might be saying that wrong, but the GLIA Summit. In fact, in 2022, the summit was held here on our Lake Erie Islands. Can you tell us about that annual event?
So the very first event was on Beaver Island back in 2017. We weren't fully organized, but we got together and everybody said, this is something that we feel is really important and we want to participate. And then the following year we moved to Madeline. And then the third year after that, we went to Mackinac. And then unfortunately the pandemic came along and we had to wait until 2022 to be able to have the ones here in Lake Erie. And that was, orchestrated between Middle Bass and ourselves here in Put-in-Bay at Kelly's and Peely. And it was really an exciting event. And so this year we had our Great Lakes Islands Alliance Summit up in the Lake Chanel Islands, which is in the Upper Peninsula. So the next time around, we'll be heading back to Beaver, probably in 2025 or 26.
So when it was here in 2022, do you remember what kinds of things we were able to share? You guys share with the guests, what kind of things we did?
Well, one of the things that's been very interesting for a lot of the islands to share in is migration. And we talked a lot about monarch migration as well as the bird migration, because all of the islands, whether they're Canadian or American, are connected to this migration pathway. So that was a big part of our topic. And also what makes us unique. In our case here, we talked a lot about the history that connected our islands and the wineries and the whole industry that was a part of that. And then we looked at some of the things that are making our community sustainable these days, which here for Put-in-Bay and Kelly especially is all about tourism, and like Mackinac, we really build our entire community economy on tourism. And so when we're talking about that, we talk about things that are issues that are common to the people, whether that's workforce housing or employees, logistics of being able to have businesses operating on the islands during the summertime. And, when you get a number of islanders together and they start to look at these things, they can really share some of their problems and their solutions as a group. And that's what the summit's really been key for, is being able to hear other people's stories and be able to see how that fits in with your own island. Because a lot of times, we are isolated, and how we make our decisions, how we work through problems. And so to know that other islands are going through some of the same issues is really critical and helpful, because otherwise, as Philip said, we feel like you are isolated here in a community. So these days with Zoom, we're able to have monthly meetings where we can talk about this, but there's nothing that replaces the in-person aspect of getting together and talking to people about their islands and their island community differences and sameness. We're really more alike than you would expect.
Yeah. Back in 2022, this question's actually for Dayton. I know that you got to attend some of that summit when it was here, and it was early days here at Shores and Islands, Ohio. Do you have any memories of that? Like, what was surprising to you about life on an island?
Well, it definitely was like literally my first week here. It was one of the first things I did. And I definitely remember being able to experience like a couple of the islands in just like, almost 2 days. Was a lot of fun. I did meet a lot of people, I guess, interacting with everybody from the different islands was really fun for me. Obviously, it was all pretty new, and seeing the island itself was pretty new, especially during the season it was. Everything was kind of closed down at that point. So it was really interesting to see what it was like outside of, the summer hours and everything. But it was still a really fun experience because we got to see a lot of the island, check it out and move around, see, the glacier grooves. We got a tour inside of them, which a lot of people don't get to do.
Right.
We got to see
That's
a lot
on Kelly's
of
Island,
behind
folks.
the scenes. I mean, Kelly's. I'm sorry. Yeah, when we were on Kelly's, we did move around. We moved around to a couple of the islands. So it was a lot of fun just kind of being out there and meeting a lot of people and hearing, stories from, the other islands.
That is a nice thing about the Lake Erie Islands communities, right? I mean, it's not just about South Bass Island. It's not just about Middle Bass Island. They, here in Lake Erie all really interact well together. So for those of us that have never lived on an island or, can't really comprehend even what it's like, question for both Peter and Philip, whichever of you want to answer, like what are some of those unique challenges that like maybe we don't think about? Like it made me laugh that the horse delivers the Amazon package. What are some other, things that are specific to island living?
Yeah, I can take that one. I mean, certainly up where I live, but I think this goes for all island communities. Transportation can be an issue. A lot of it's weather dependent. Anytime you're getting on a boat that has a schedule. I know earlier this year we had a couple of islands, my island and another one. I'm forgetting, maybe Peter remembers which island it was, that were having problems with their ferry companies, having ownership changes to their hours. There was concern that, you weren't going to be able to get back to the island in time to catch the last ferry. So there's often a lot of anxiety and logistical difficulty around transportation. The other one that's really big is, because islands are geographically limited in their size, housing almost always ends up being a concern. We've been in a housing emergency here on Mackinac for probably 15 years. There's never any homes for sale, and there's nothing that you can rent. It's all taken up. So when I moved here, I was effectively homeless for about 6 months. I was couch surfing for 6 months after I took a position up here on Mackinac Island because there was nothing available. I had to wait for somebody to move out of their apartment so I could have a place to live.
I would second that. I think housing is a critical issue, not just for summer workers, but for year-round people who want to, or people who've come here who want to be able to live here year-round. The number of available homes for sale is probably under 1% of the total number of homes, and that goes across not just the islands, but some of the shoreline communities as well. And so, the cost of living and the cost of buying a house is sometimes at a prohibitive level. And so we're all struggling with the idea of what we can do to be able to build affordable housing and to be able to provide an opportunity for families that want to be able to stay on the islands. Because the last thing that we all want is for our communities to dwindle away to just summer people. We really enjoy our communities. We enjoy our year-round lifestyle here. And it's not for everybody, but if you come here and you enjoy what the island has to give, you'll find that living here in the wintertime is probably one of the most magical parts of the island experience. And as Philip mentioned, ferry service is always a critical component to that. Madeline Island just this year bought their ferry from a private company and have now made it into a public venture. And so, every island, there's no islander who you will talk to who won't tell you about their ferry company, whether they have good stories or bad stories, they're willing to dish.
What about things like healthcare? Is that going to be a challenge? I mean, at least I know in the Lake Erie Islands, right? I mean, a lot of times you have to leave the island for doctor's appointments and things like that. Is that a common issue amongst other islands?
It certainly is here on Mackinac, especially in the summer, because, like I said, there are days when we have upwards of 20,000 people on the island, and all we have is a med center with one ICU unit. If you have an emergency, if you're trying to have your baby while you're here, you might have to take a helicopter. So it can be difficult. And then, of course, if you live here, and this is also true for even the seasonal residents, there's only one doctor who is full-time. So, it's hard to get a new primary care anywhere in this country right now.
Right.
Now imagine that you live in a community with 20,000 people in the summer and there's one doctor. The wait list is like years and years long. So yes, it is difficult. And that's an area where I think GLIA really can help and does help when we start having those conversations. Like a big one for us on Mackinac is there's no mental health treatment options anywhere. But in talking to people through GLIA, it's like, okay, what do you guys do about that? Oh, we use a telehealth service or whatever. And you can discover ways that you may not have thought of that somebody else is using. And I know that's taken off here recently is telehealth is becoming huge. I mean, after COVID, everybody's...
Thank goodness for the internet.
Yeah, my primary care is virtual now. I'm grateful for that.
Yeah, that's a big challenge here on South Bass Island as well, because we don't have any doctors on the island. And so if you have a chronic condition and you need to come and go from the island, especially in the wintertime, a lot of times it may be prudent to rent a house on the mainland. If you have an appointment on Tuesday and there's low level fog or some other inversion of weather, you might not be able to leave the island at all because, at the wintertime, we're pretty much using the planes to get back and forth to the mainland. So that is a real big issue, I think. And, we do have telehealth finally this year on the island, and we have a really, robust EMS department, as well as some really dedicated folks that do the fire and the emergency response. But I think healthcare is probably one of the most critical issues to being able to maintain a sustainable year-round community. And, I'm always really envious of islands like Beaver, which has a medical center where they bring in different specialists every week. So, maybe on Monday it's an internist, and on Thursday it's somebody who's a pediatrician. We don't have that. So it definitely changes the situation for our older community of island residents.
I think it's really nice, though, that you have the ability to chat with other folks who are in similar circumstances. Just kind of another commonality talking about the Great Lakes, I guess, would be weather, right? I mean, we're all in the northern part of the United States, so I would guess at least we know here locally, like you said, Peter, that sometimes there are times where you can't get on and off the island. Is that also an issue in other islands?
Oh, definitely. I mean, we all struggle with that, and if the ice doesn't come in, like last year was really a bad ice year, the ferries can't run and the planes are limited. You need to plan ahead, if you've got a reason to be somewhere. And I can tell you, last year, I think it was, we had plans to leave the island, and we had to hire Rescue Marine, which is over there in Marblehead, to come over here and bring people off the island because it was so foggy, so dense that there wasn't any planes flying for about a week.
And that's really got to hurt when you have appointments, or maybe you've scheduled a flight to go somewhere, or,
right.
Things like that you can't reschedule. So I don't know if this is necessarily Great Lakes Island Alliance related, but I know at least our island, and I think Mackinac is involved in it, is the inter-island basketball tournament that we have every year. Is it every year, Peter?
Yeah, so the Great Lakes Islands Alliance, our very first year when we were in Beaver, Steve Poe, who was then the superintendent from Put-in-Bay, got together with the superintendents from Mackinac and Beaver and Washington and said, maybe we're all about the same size of year-round attendance in our schools. Maybe we could have a basketball tournament. And so every year we've had a basketball tournament since then. And interestingly enough, this year, Put-in-Bay will be the host. And so the 4 teams from Washington, Mackinac, and Beaver Island all get together, and they both, the girls and the boys, have a tournament. And I think the thing that's key for that is the fact that the kids get to understand that there are other people like them that have the same kinds of experiences that they do. And so when they come to the island, or we go to their island, they start to share that camaraderie that only island kids can really have. And that it's really a wonderful thing. And it's been something that we've been, promoting as the Great Lakes Islands Alliance as being sort of that outreach component for what we do, which is, the interaction between our communities and the children that within our communities that go to our schools.
And in today's day and age, they can become friends. Via social media, they can keep in contact and have friends, who have similar lives as they do. I think that's really unique. One of the things that I've heard about the basketball tournament is, of course, that's an important component of it, but it's also a very social component for again, similar to the summit, where a bunch of different island folks get together. And somebody told me once that it's customary to bring like groceries and milk and things like that. Is that true?
Well, that's a story that has rooted in fact, because here on the island, this was a couple of years ago when we were hosting it before, the cost of a gallon of milk was about $6. And I think it's even higher than that now. And so the kids came over on the plane and they each kid brought a gallon of milk to give to one of the other kids here on our island as a goodwill gesture. And it was well received, and it was valuable in understanding how expensive it can be to be here in the wintertime and how challenging it is to be able to provision for your family. We all have regular refrigerators, and most people here who live on the island year round have a full size freezer. So we have all of our proteins and our fruits and vegetables that are, frozen, available for the winter, but fresh things like milk, cheese, and eggs have to be flown over. So there's an additional cost that's involved in bringing people the groceries that are, green groceries. Being able to have lettuce in the wintertime is a rare item. You have to pay for that.
Right. An additional expense to living on an island as well. When does that tournament take place, Peter?
I think it's the first weekend in December.
December. Okay. Well, I do know that you can watch it via YouTube, via our local radio station, WPCR and WPIB radio. So hopefully if you're interested, you can check that out and see some of the basketball action and the interaction of the folks. So is there anything else either of you would like to share about the Great Lakes Island Alliance?
Well, let me just say this. The Great Lakes Islands Alliance is a growing entity, and we always welcome people participating. There is no fee for being a participant, no fee for being a member. And, a lot of times the most interesting parts of our lives are shared, when we come together both in person and on the monthly Zoom calls. And so we welcome people who, love islands. Maybe you have a summer house on an island and want to participate. You live off island in the wintertime. That's okay. What we're looking for is to be able to grow this community. And I know that, Philip, you can probably attest to this. There is something magical about being a part of an island community, and whether or not you can call yourself an islander or not, to be part of that island community is really a wonderful thing. But it's not for everybody.
Philip, anything else to add?
I would second everything Peter just said, that we are looking to grow more, and anybody who lives on an island, even if it's only for part of the year, if you're interested in getting involved, just, head to our website, check us out, attend one of our Zoom meetings, and get to know us, because we'd love to have you.
Can one of you guys actually give us that website name for where people can go to find more information on the Great Lakes Island Alliance?
Yeah, our website address is glialliance.org.
Perfect. So folks listening, please keep in mind that Ohio's island season is far from over. There's plenty of upcoming events, including Oktoberfest and Halloween celebrations on both islands to keep you entertained. And fall is a really lovely and quiet time of the year to visit our islands. So special thanks to Phillip Rice and Peter Huston from the Great Lakes Islands Alliance for joining us today. And of course, thank you for listening. If you enjoyed this podcast, please be sure to like and subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts so that you don't miss a minute of the action here in Shores and Islands, Ohio. You can also find more information, including past episodes of the podcast, online at shoresandislands.com. And we will see you next time on The Shoreline.